Thank you, Lucille. And AI companion in the room, so my self-preservation is up. I got to look after myself if there's a robot or something clever in the room, and the one-on-one instinct is also up. I mean, how do I connect with the AI companion? I mean, that's going to be quite a challenge, and I've already looked at some of the names in this group, and my social is subtype is really quite nervous. I see people, very important people in the Enneagram world on the call, and a special welcome to Sally Prince. Sally, I'm not going to tell everybody how we know each other, but when you're one of my first business partners when we worked with flowers, I'm so happy to see you on year two. So 27 subtypes, and I said to myself, Casper, you are going to have to speak slowly to make sure that we land some of it, because this is a really a special place for me when it comes to the Enneagram. I've been fortunate to work with Enneagram for more than 20 years and almost 30 years. And I remember in the early days meeting B Chestnut and working with her and being in her courses, and we became good friends. And at one stage, she and Uranio said to me, "I have to come to Finland to join them for Beyond the Subtypes course." And I was thinking, beyond the subtypes, I'm just trying to get to the types at the moment. Never mind beyond the subtypes. And that was a fascinating experience to really learn and get to know the importance of subtypes. And in a way, if the Enneagram was my business and I started it way back, I would have started it with the subtypes, because I don't think one can really understand your own type unless you really, really understand the subtypes. It's almost like the world of Enneagram has done it the wrong way around. Because in my presentation, I'll show it to you that our subtype, the instinct. So your dominant subtype is the mask that's on top of the mask, which is your enneagram. So our subtype is a mask that we put on top of our actual enneagram. We can't really see people's enneagrams act out there, but we surely can see their subtypes act out there. So um, just a caveat: if anybody tells you that they're an expert on, they know the subtypes really well and they're the expert in this world, you should run. I think it's truly alive. It's something that's still developing. I hope to, in the end of the session, share with you that there's actually something else than the subtypes, and that's actually more how our subtypes are stacked. Are you self-pres, one-on-one social, or are you self-pres social, one-on-one, or are you social? So that's a totally different world that's opening, and I find that very, very, very exciting. So I'm going to share with you so many stuff that over years we've collected our experience in it. Unfortunately, with so many people on here, a Q&A while we're busy, it's not really going to work. We'll leave that for the end. So I'm going to try my best to finish at least half an hour before 6 o'clock, so that we can have a Q&A and talk about subtypes. I think that would be really useful to everyone. Now, as a self-pres myself, let me just for a moment hope and hold thumbs that whatever I'm going to share is going to work. And I hope Lucilla is on standby on that side, and I know she is on standby. So let me find the slides and let's start the presentation. So you can just say to me, let me go out again because I think I had to include the sound, and go back again and share sound, and that's in.
Well, Casper is doing that, an invitation for everyone to practice their social instincts. And in the chat, tell us where you're joining from. Welcome here. And yes, I can see your presentation, but there we go. It's on
Fantastic.
presentation mode
And,
now.
and I just want to note that some of this work is also from Ian McCallum's work when it comes to really how do we survive in the jungle. I think Sonia's also on this call, and she wrote this lovely blog a while back. It's hard to survive in the jungle if you're trained in the zoo. Now our subtypes really gets activated when we are in, let's call it the jungle. But the context we're in, and why is subtype so important? And you'll see, and this is a video that we use often in our world, where we help people navigating complexity, and some of the basic principles to navigate complexity. Well, it sits in the subtype. So I'm just zooming out with this slide, and you would, if you know the subtypes well, you will notice all three of them in here. How to thrive in complexity. So you would see there was often a intersection between vehicles, not where we have traffic lights, but a roundabout for vehicles. And in that roundabout, it's a perfect example of how our instincts are in harmony. Everybody is self-preservation. They know where they are. They've got a connection with where's the other car, and then they go with the group. They go with the flow. So I think an important start for me is the subtypes or the three instincts. It doesn't come from the Enneagram world. It's the kind of the Enneagram world has taken that from a universal law. It's not something that's owned by the Enneagram world, but the Enneagram explains to us exactly how important they are, and we can type ourselves and we can figure out what is our own subtypes, and then we can see how those instincts, how they look very differently depending on a person's type. So just according to and most of the work here was done by Naranjo, and it's about there's a dominant instinct that we have, and then we have a secondary instinct, and then we have a repressed instinct. And the dominant is really a person uses this more than the other two instincts. We all have a dominant one. And again, these instincts should change over time. It's not fixed like our types are. But we do see at the moment, people don't really change their dominant instinct. It's almost like that's also fixed, which is a problem living in complexity. Secondary is we don't really think we need this instinct. It's not an unbalanced way, but it's kind of there. It's kind of a natural part of us. And then repressed. This instinct is severely suppressed, is neglected, not allowed to surface as if it's less important than the other two. Just to know that there's a dominant one, there's a secondary one, and a repressed one. And it's interesting now, even in our business, we find that when we work with clients at the moment in, let's say, Eastern Europe, we kind of don't want to do enneagrams with them because they're all going to come out as type sixes, highly likely. So we know that the instincts are also formed and kind of cultivated as part of our human history, where we come from. And Rania speaks about, self-preservation is really the historic part of us in wars, periods of starvation, environments of stealing and looting, disease breakouts. COVID was a kind of a phase. We could say that more people will be kind of high on self-preservation if they've gone through COVID. lockdown was a typical self-preservation act, and it was kind of formed who we are. So historic, we see that spiritual, if you have a dominant self-preservation, it's almost like a spiritual part where you say to God, God, you've left me helpless. I will now look after myself. It's a form of spiritual forming for a person to say, no, God is not there. And if it's repressed, your self-preservation really repressed, then, well, God, I will remind you that you left me helpless and not look after myself. So I'll kind of we see this play out in different ways in the world. So that's the world of self-preservation. And if we look at social, historic of social would be slavery, genocides, apartheid. I think apartheid created. I see many of my clients who were on the receiving end, on the wrong end of apartheid. They come out as very strong socially, because the survival was to be part of a social group. I myself have a very low social because I was part of an apartheid government. I was in the army, and gosh, I'm just so scared of groups because what groups do is I don't know, they lock up, attack, and just do wrong things. While some other people in our country, social would be great to be part of. For me, social is not good to be part of. And spiritual, God, you've sent me away from paradise. I'm going to be my own God now. Or even if it's really, really repressed, is God does not exist from the start. I depend on people and on groups. I don't need God. So again, this is not an exact science. This is interesting conversations that's happening in a dynamic way in this world about where do these instincts come from. And if we look at the one-on-one, it's towards the significant other. It's periods of rivalry, where there was family wars, abuse, homicide. At the moment, we see this in America. We see that people don't vote Republican in America or vote Democratic. I am Republican. I am Democratic. So you get two polarities in America. Nothing is coming up in between the two. There's nothing in the middle. It's either or. And according to the Enneagram system, we will find in America at the moment, people will come strong one-on-one. There will be one-on-ones that will be born in America because they grow up or they get born in a system where it's either or, us against them. And spiritually, they say dominant. It's almost like if you're dominant in the one-on-one, it's almost like don't leave me. I want to feel you with zeal. So I want. It's almost a tantric way as my relationship with the other will connect us with God. So I really want to get into the other. It's really a relationship issue. If I really find somebody else and they can really empower me, then we will meet God. Or if it's repressed, as you've left me and I don't feel you anymore, I'm numb. So we find some people are very low on one-on-one. The spiritual background of that is like, I'm just numb. There's nothing I can feel. So this is just an interesting appetizer for you of these things are complex. We can just have a workshop on this slide. We can just have a workshop on this slide. So again, the self-preservation, what happens when we try to tame these instincts? Is my life is under threat. This is now a dominant self-praise. I'm on time. I'm prepared. I'm focused. I'm skeptical. I know what I need. I'm the internal adult and responsible one, and I don't trust others. So it doesn't matter what your type is. So for a moment, just zoom out of your type. If you are dominant self-praise, this is most probably true. One can describe a dominant self-praise irrespective of type with these descriptors. So one would think that somebody who thinks their life is under threat is a type 6. No, it's a dominant self-preservation person. And if it's repressed, well, then I'm bold. I enlarge myself. I put myself out on risk. I'm a workaholic. I'm impulsive, disorganized. I underestimate capacity. I'm often late. I'm an internal child. I need taking care of. This is kind of, if you're repressed, this is how you could describe a person. This is not describing a type 8 or a type 7 or a lazy type 3. This is somebody who is high or low on self-preservation. Just if you like me, I'm a strong self-paced. I would now figure out how the hell am I going to get all these notes and stuff written down. You can just send me an email and I'll send you the slides. So you can also just take a breather if you want to figure out how the hell am I going to capture all these things. You just contact me if you want more information. The social is towards a group role state. A dominant social is somebody who really seeks approval of the group to fulfill their role and survive. Image is crucial. And we would think image, Lucille, is crucial for a type 3. No, image is not a type 3 place. Image is somebody who's dominant and social. It's important, and I'm repeating this because I think it's important because we would put image to type 3 as an example. No, image is far more in the instincts than just in the type. If it's repressed, ignore a version of groups. I'm on the outside. Groups take, they are needy and want it all. It's low social group skills, non-influential, apolitical, individualistic. You would think this might be type 5. No, it's somebody who is repressed on social. And then the one-on-one instincts again is towards the significant other. Dominant is I'm intense towards the other life. Unhealthy triangulations, which we see in this place of dominant one-on-one. Irrational expectations of the other. Competitive, aggressive, persuasive, seductive. I need you. I need you because if I get you and we are in a relationship, that's how we meet God. That's the dominant Essex, and then the repressed is lack of intensity, low, rational, boring energy, excessive calm and non-expressive. People who are low in charisma goes with the flow and they keep themselves in the background. Nines keep themselves in the background. Not all nines are repressed in Essex. So again, instead of saying somebody who keeps in the background is a type 5 or a type 9, no, it's somebody with Essex repressed. David White writes beautifully about the three marriages in life. For us, we have a marriage between the three marriages, and that's where the subtypes really, the soul becomes alive for me. Is David White writes, in our life, we have a marriage to the self, and then we have a marriage to the other. And then we have a marriage to work or the social, your place that you go out and you are in this world. And then he says the true marriage of life is actually those three being married in a good way. And that explains beautifully for me the Enneagram, because if we can have these three instincts of ours married in a good way, talking to each other, dancing with each other, that's really, really where we can then be in a healthy place, a healthy space in our types. Instead of just working on my type, how about playing with my instincts? Because if they dance well together, we see people manifest in good ways in their types. Lucille, you wanted to interrupt something in there for a moment? You want to say something while I take a breath for the next slide?
Yeah. Yeah, Casper, I just love that idea of the three marriages. And I think it really resonates in so many ways with what Russ Hudson also says about the instincts, where he says our life is a temple to our dominant instinct, but we don't always know that we're even living in that temple. And I think that's where that observer, the inner observer, the part of us that can watch how we relate to all the instincts, the dominant and the repressed or blind ones, allows us to build that beautiful meta marriage, the one about the three working together and how they collaborate together. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. And I'll go back to the end and give you some tips how to work on it, because our instincts should change. They should move depending on context. They should not be fixed. We try and tame them. That's why I've got tame there in bold. It's an illusion that we tame them. I take people to Big Five country, and it's amazing to see when we walk the Enneagram or walk in a place like Sabi, where there are big five. I'm not talking walking into a mountain or just into a forest. Where the big five is, that's where our instincts were developed. It's amazing. Once we walk and the vehicle goes away, it's almost instant that people will be 33% self-pres, 33% one-on-one, 33% social. It almost happens automatically because that's where these instincts were formed. It's on the playas of African land, and we have this illusion in the real life that we can tame them and have one dominant or not. That is a dangerous game we're playing because, like Sonja Bluchner just wrote, we're actually not in the zoo, we are in the jungle.
Mm.
And yeah, so that for me is important. So
I've
imagine
experienced
you,
that. Just for a moment,
yeah,
Casper, I've experienced that as well. Ooh, we'll talk
yeah.
about it later.
Imagine you were a bird in this flock. So in this flock, we have it, let's call this a complex system in harmony. We have the three instincts come out. Every bird, they follow three rules, these birds. The first rule is manage yourself. Don't bump into someone else. Don't be an asshole. It's just like for these birds, it's like that's what you do in this flock. And then manage the distance between you and the other birds. Know who the other assholes are. Or know just who might bump into you. And then type three, not type three, the social one is move in the direction where the group moves. Just collaborate with the bigger group. Self-preservation, look after yourself, look after a few other, and make sure a few other look after you and understand your position in the relationship in the group. Right there is the three instincts of the Enneagram. Right there, it's there. It's so the instincts are alive. There are so many examples of that in this world, and really, it comes from your human or Homo sapiens head thinking, our logical head thinking that makes us clever, and then we have a limbic system, which is the heart, and then we have the gut, and these instincts come from the gut, and then they meet the heart. They meet the heart. I mean, Ian McCallum writes beautifully about this. So my invitation is also for us then go back. We should, Urania does it lovely. In Finland, we did fantastic things how we played. We went back to our instincts. As we should go and visit them. It's the reptile within us. Your subtype is then where the instinct meets your passion. Your subtype is where the instincts, these three instincts, where they meet your passion. Your passion is your Enneagram type. That is your subtype. It's the mask of our mask. It's almost like we pretend that the original mask does not exist. I'm a self-preservation six. I'm just basically scared about everything. But when I meet people and I'm on a call like this, you would most probably rather say, "Well, I've got some humor and I'm warm and I'm inviting and I'm well, I hope so, little." But that's how it would because that's when the instincts hits the type six, self-preservation six. It comes over as warmth. So people often don't think I'm a type six. Why? Because they don't see six, they see warmth. So the mask that I put over fear is warmth. And I'll explain later why that works and why I think everybody else should have that mask on too to survive in this world. But it's your to come back to this slide here is when your gut, when your instinct meets your passion. And remember, our enneagram is our passions. It's where the heart. It's when the gut meets the heart. That's where it manifests as your subtype. And you get the one, which is the self-preservation one. And then you get the one-on-one one, and we get the social one, social instinct. And What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all the types with you now, and I'm going to help you understand, or not understand, that's the wrong word. I'm going to hopefully explore with you what does it look like for each type. And you'll see I've got a yellow thing in the middle there, and that means it's the counter type. So I would go through my presentation, and I'll when there's a yellow block around it, it's the counter type. And the counter type is when it goes against the flow. It's a and the best places we can see that is in the type six, because you've got a fearful six. The one runs away and the other one attacks. It's phobic and counterphobic. It's a counter. Both of them are scared. Classic in the type twos, the self-preservation type two is somebody who looks more like a child, and they need help rather than helping other people. So I'm going to share with you the different subtypes, and hopefully it's not too rushed, and hopefully you can get a sense of it. Lucille, you're welcome to interrupt. And if anybody sits on something really, really pressing, my type two says, please just call it and put your hand up and say something. Hopefully that won't happen all the time, but I'm not going to be a social six. And a social six would have kind of directed this in an AI session, but I don't like people. I don't trust people. But this is not. I'm a self-preservation six, so please feel welcome to interrupt if you really have to.
I love where
So
we're
in
going, Casper. So let's keep going. Just one thing. I sometimes call the counter type the upside down type because it's almost like the passion turns on its head.
Yeah, it's a good one, and I can imagine you do that because type fours don't mind to be upside down and whatever, but some other types might not like that. But yes, go for it. You're 100% right. So the type one. Remember now, the instincts here meets the passion, and the passion is anger. So here's this force of nature, this force that's instincts that's been developed on the pliers. It's much older. Just remember your subtypes, your instincts. Your instincts don't care whether you like them or not. I can use the F word here as well. They care a They don't care. They are instincts. It's not something that you negotiate with. It's not something that you work. It's not. You can play with them, but don't try and force them. Don't try. Instincts, they don't care. They come up, and it's really what made us survive over a long period of time. And then that instinct meets a personality or a passion that's been formed by nature or nurture. And when that instinct hits that passion, and we all have different passions, it manifests in a different way. So the self-preservation one, it looks like worry. The self-preservation ones can look more worrying than type sixes. So to say that somebody, oh, that person worry a lot, must be a type six. No, they're high on self-pres, and most likely a type one. They worry, and we call it also the warm one. The self-preservation six, when that instinct of self-preservation hits, they also become warm. And I want to be perfect. But what they show the world is they show the world worry. And inside of them, they want to be perfect. It's a warm, we call it the warm one. I am angry and frustrated that I'm not perfect already. It's the most perfectionist of all the type ones. I need control over detail, and they can look a lot like a type six. Anger and anxiety for them is warmth. I want to be perfect. These types, when I debrief them, very upset with being called a strict perfectionist or a meticulous judge. No, no, I'm trying to be a perfectionist. I am not one. I hate it when somebody says I'm a perfectionist. That's my goal. That's what I try to be. So in development with them, it's for them to work on their inner critic, for them to catch and befriend their critic, play with opportunities to be messy, to be bad at times, and they've got to practice with good enough as the new perfect. It's a very different development road for somebody who is a type one and has got the passion of anger and has got high on self-praise than the other type ones. Very different. This is the Yeah, this is the one that they just try as hard as they can to be it. And then we get the social type one, which is rigidity. And that is what Uranio says they would, and I think Naranjo also came out with that, and eventually that's kind of the word in the subtype world that we say, yeah, rigidity. This is what this person shows the world. They show the world rigidity. I'm not going to change. I've actually figured out what perfect looks like already. It's the cold one. I am, and I know what perfect looks like. They don't worry that much. Why would I worry if I'm perfect already? Why would I worry so much if I figured it out? It's often the irritating teacher archetype or the pastor or priest that really think and say they are talking to God all the time. They've done it already. They've ticked the box. And apologies if I maybe step on people's toes here. I'm amplifying slightly because I think in amplification we learn better. But remember, if you're a type one, you've got all three of these in you. And sometimes it's good for you, if you are a self-person one, to sometimes know, hey, I've done things good enough already. So I don't want to make this bad. I'm just giving you the archetype, because if you're a high on self-preservation one, that doesn't mean you're a good type one. You should have these three balanced. A self-preservation one should trust that they're already perfect in certain places. In the same way that the social should not trust that they're perfect, and they should try and be more self-pres, or at least allow that instinct in. I figured out what is right. I know already, rigid about the truth, and they can look a lot like a type 5. This type also sticks to their group. That's the same as they are. Social groups is, I've got my crowd. I've got my crowd. And by the way, if you're a human being, you have all of these in you anyway. So, but when you prefer a crowd, that's my crowd, and I trust them, and I only read the stuff that they send me. That's your social one activated. Development is relax about the truth. There is no truth. Mix with everyone. Other less superior groups to anger is fueled by the need to be always right, and adapt to others' ways is a great practice. Great practice for this type. Then the one-on-one is the counter type, zeal. It's almost zeal in the sense that I make you, the other, perfect. It's the hot one. So we get the warm one, hot one, and a cold one. The hot one is really I fix my daughter, I fix my dog, I fix my wife, I fix my best friend, I fix somebody who it's that part of me that walks past, and I just quickly help. Let me just get that right. That's better. It's that part that kind of just helps somebody else. Oh, there's something in your on your lip. Can you just it's almost an obsessive part of always noticing what's getting out on the lawn and see, oh, that's the weed, taking the weed out, instead of, wow, look at my lawn. I'm angry that others are not perfect. I'm impatient about this. I own the truth for others, and it can look a lot like a type 8. I think Helen Ziller is quite strong on this part. And and again, this part is also important because the world at the moment needs a lot of correction. So again, there's place for this. I mean, Helen Ziller, for those of you who are maybe international crowds, she's a politician in South Africa that's not everybody loves, but followers do love her. But she's one of those people, when she steps in, she gets things done. And at the moment, I live in Johannesburg, and people are talking about Helen Ziller should come and rescue Johannesburg. I'm not a Helen Ziller fan, but yes, I would like her to come to Johannesburg because she is I think, a one-on-one one, and she's going to fix things. So again, all these subtypes have got places depending on context. These types need to relax more. Um, Human beings are inherently imperfect. Don't fix people. Own your own critical projections. Respond. It's the same as a type 8 is don't act, don't react, don't react, don't react. So there's almost the personal work for a one-on-one type 1 is very similar to a type 8. Self-preservation too. I mean, B is publicly stated that she's this. I mean, I've had so many great games to play with her and conversations with her. So B is a self-preservation too. And a self-preservation too. Remember now, the passion is pride, and the pride is actually that I know what other people need, and I'm proud about the fact that I don't have pride. I'm very proud that I don't have pride. It's very tough for type twos to understand this passion. It's most probably the most difficult passion of all the passions to understand. And twos are often very proud that they don't have pride, but that is pride. And I'll go to the other one to the counter type later. But the one-on-one is I seduce the other like a lover. This is really the Cleopatra like. This is just plain seduction. I'm going to make sure you like me and you love me. It's almost a double type two. I'm getting my needs met by meeting other people's needs. And it can look a lot like a type four. It's an emotional type, powerful type two. It's emotional, and I'll seduce people by making sure that they just love me because I'm lovable. And I mean, they won't have a chance. Development this year is really for these people to develop a sense of independence and autonomy. You don't need other people to be powerful. You can be powerful on your own. And it's to moderate their need to charm others. You are okay on your own. You don't have to have a partner, a lover, a best friend. You on your own are actually also fine in this world. Then when it's social, this is a lovely archetype for me to. I often I work with groups, I would explain to the group this is the best group I've ever worked with. Most probably the same as this group, Lucille. I've never worked with such a great group than this Sephora group. I mean, it's what 20, 25 of the best people in the Enneagram world. They've all logged in. I mean, this group can change the Enneagram. So that is what the social type two does. They seduce you with ambition, seduce you with power. It's a little bit like the motivational speaker. It's that leader that can get everybody to understand this is the group. We can do it. We can do it. They take care of group needs, proudly ambitious and connected. They can look like a type 8, powerful, like a type 3, goal driven, unemotional, and they get people moving. They get them moving. So what they need to do in their development is a little bit more humility, offer superior position to others and be inferior. How about let somebody else get this group going? How about not you being the one that take care of everybody else? The social two is so good at what they do that nobody else gets chance to step into their two and deliver and help others. You can really lead from within. You don't have to be the one right in the front. And then the counter type, the like Lucille says, upside down I sometimes tell and when I work in groups and we have a lunch break, I ask if it's possible for the type twos. Nobody can dish up from the buffet lunch until all the type twos have dished up. Nobody allowed to dish up, and this is very traumatic for type twos to dish up before anybody else. They almost can't do it. And it's quite a fun exercise, except it doesn't work if the type twos are self-preservation type twos because they go and stand in the front of the queue anyway. Because I seduce you like a child. It's that puppy face kind of, would you please take care of me? Got this incredible ability to seduce like a child, almost a privilege. It's the counter type. When it's quite funny when I work with bigger groups and B and I work together as a six. I don't want to eat at lunchtime because I'm a six and I'm scared. I want that maybe give me a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So when there's a queue I don't mind if there's a queue at the buffet because I'm just going to pick off something else. But B says, "Come, Casper, help me, bring me to the front. I need to get food first. Go and dish up for me." So really like a child because she needs to. And Uranio, who's a social Enneagram type, he forgets to eat. We'll get back to that. So this is, please take care of me. It's almost children needs. guarded yet warm. Anxiety is like a dependent child. It looks a lot like a type 6. It can look scared and needy. Somebody will have to take care of me. I'm scared. So their development then is really to share their needs and dependencies, to develop assertiveness. Adult boundaries is important, and they can often play small. It's taken a long time for B to own her world in the Enneagram, and she did that by writing her books, and now she's. I mean, you wouldn't say that she's the self-preservation type 2, but it's hard. It's been hard work for her. So that's the type 2, and the type 3 will be quick because I'm surely the type 3 we can just send an email. Any type 3s on this must be already excruciating to sit for 2 hours on that. But the type 3 is fascinating because deceit and vanity. And remember that the type 3s lie. They are the liars of the Enneagram. They just lie, and deceit is their will. But it's not deceit to the world; it's deceit to the self. They lie to themselves how good they are, and they try and prove to the world what everybody already knows. So this deceit is a lie to themselves, and it comes out as vanity. But when these instinct hits that deceit or that vanity, that fear of failure for the one-on-one, it comes out as charisma. And what this type does, the one-on-one, is I make other another person produce. I make my son be the best. I make my partner look good. At work, I'm the coach. I'm kind of the one step behind. It's a lot of charisma. And I don't want to be in the limelight, but I make sure that others will perform. That's what I do in this life. I add value by supporting the value adders. I'm somewhat in the middle, vain in some ways and not vain in others. I'm the cheerleader. When you perform, I perform. And they can look a lot like a type 7 and a type 2. It's that part in you that wants to push your partner to be the best. And then you stand back, and when they do a speech, you hope they're going to mention you. That's the part. It's really, I don't want to be the one winning. I want to be the one making sure others win. Their development is to look at their own needs there. What are their own feelings? And how about support yourself like you support others? How about you also claiming that it was you who were the supporter? And the social one is the typical type 3 where we sometimes get it wrong because we think all type 3s are into vanity and into look at me. It's the social look at what I produced. This is the typical social one, the marketer, the selling performance, keep others at bay to protect what's behind their mask. They can look like a type 8. Value action and winning is everything for them. I personally think this is, if I look at the development, distinguish between image and the real self. The real self can be easier than the image. Use failure as learning, and non-status in a group can also be very powerful. So sometimes this archetype gets a lot of bad assumptions and bad language. I think in my world, in the Enneagram world, and coaches, I think most of people I know that are good coaches, they need to be much more like this. Is get your website, your card, tell people you are good. You do know what you're talking about. Look the part, act, because you know. So we often project some of our inner needs onto this type and make them worse than that they are. We should actually step up and be more like this. The counter type is I need to produce. This is the workaholic on the Enneagram. Well, one of the workaholics. I need to produce. So the one is I produce somebody. I make sure somebody else produce. I have produced. It's in the same way that this is the one that works and works. Production is to work. There's no time for vanity. My image is I don't have an image. Production comes first. Optimizer and maximizer. A good person, best in all, can look a lot like a type 1 and a type 6. This is the place where burnout is a status symbol. burnout becomes a status symbol. Again, those instincts hit deceit and vanity, and this is then how it's shown to the world. Slow down, stop doing. Being is a sophisticated and essential form of doing. Allow others to support and empower you, and journal your feelings. Because this type do feelings, they don't feel feelings. The type 4 on the Enneagram, and apologies in the 3, I'm going fast because I would like space for us to have questions and stuff, and I'm most probably not going fast enough, but I'll speed up and see if I can get it. We can skip the 4. The whole of the 4 is upside down, Lucille, by the way. And then the counter type 4 is actually upside. It's actually no. So self-preservation. It's actually not the one. We go to one-on-one. This is for the 4. This is the passion, those instinct. It meets envy. Envy that I'm not part of the group. I'm excluded, which 4s then obviously do themselves. But envy is the passion here, and then that envy gets into competition. The one-on-one for Essex is then I make others suffer. I'm gonna make you come second. I'm gonna make sure that there's the suffering in this world I can't handle. The best way for me to handle it, I hand some of it out. It's called the MAT for. It's compensate for my suffering. Likely recipient of rejection, therefore I reject others. So they reject themselves first, and they seek then superiority. Can look a lot like a type 8 and a type 3. It's the one subtype that type 8s are scared of. It's a place where suffering. I'm not good with suffering. We often say that the type 4 is a place of suffering, and they're good with it. No, they've got issues with suffering. This type projects suffering onto others, and they kind of dash it out to others. And again, I can switch and have a conversation here. What's wonderful about this type is they get things done, extremely creative. That suffering then also leads to innovation, leads to beautiful things that they can create. So if they're in their higher self, that suffering is just the energy. They don't make others suffer, but they can empower others. They can help others to transcend. So in a healthy format, remember all of these things I'm sharing with you can be very, very, very positive. So they've got to own their projection of suffering, give support to others too. There's normally a deeper sadness under it, and they've got to decrease their need to compete by owning their own strengths. They don't have to prove it. The social one is the one of shame, is I am suffering. Uranio speaks beautifully about it, is that child who really is suffering, and then because of the suffering, the parents say, "Oh, I love you." So if I can show how much I suffer, the world starts loving me. That's how this type is kind of formed. Is people love people who suffer. They take care of me. So I'm going to show my suffering, and I'm going to show all of it because that's how people will love and like me. It's the sad for emotionally sensitive, find comfort in suffering. I get attention through complaining, taking it all within. It's a 4x4. Call this the 4x4 4. So it's it's on steroids. Um, and the development is then really work with their self-esteem, work with shame, and take action to get what you want instead of allowing envy and suffering to do it. Um, yeah, you don't have to look like you're suffering. You can actually say this is what you need and want. And then the other way to get what you want is to be in a world that is filled with suffering. And it's almost the Lawrence of Arabia kind of archetype with this, where he arrives in the end on his camel or a horse at this water hole, and he hasn't had any water, food. The poor animal is almost dead, and he gets off, and people ask him, "How are you doing?" He says, "I'm doing well. I'm doing fine." It's tenacity. It's the countertype. It's I'm not suffering. Well, everybody knows you are suffering. It's the person that it's so obvious they're going through hell, and they would say, "It's the best time ever." Who wouldn't love somebody like that? It's the glad for. And Russell, this is most probably the most mistyped that I've seen people where this is no man, you're a type 7. A lot of type 7s. No, no, that person's not a 7. They're actually a self-preservation 4. You want to say something about that?
Yeah, I remember when Bea was writing the complete Enneagram, she said, I'm writing this book so that self-praise fours can find themselves because it's very hard to type, yeah, and very misunderstood. And so it's often people say, I don't think I'm on the Enneagram. And it's because the four is so misunderstood and you don't see the self-praise four side of it.
Yeah. Fantastic. This is the, yeah, I'm not suffering and it can look a lot like a 7. So for them is to really share and communicate all your feelings. No, no, there's more to life than being unhappy. And there's more to life than being happy. It's okay to actually share your sadness. Isn't it fascinating? For us, type 4, you've got to invite to share that they're sad. Well, that's the self-preservation 4. Allow for lightness in your life, dance, yoga, and play more easier on the self. So the envy is someone else has what I think is missing for me. It hits the self-preservation 5. This, if I say it hits, these instincts come up. I mean, they just surface, and it hits avarice. And when it hits avarice, what the self-preservation 5 does is I just create a castle. I mean, I just got to protect what I have. It's an invisible cloak. I go into my own world, very protective of my personal space and privacy, clear limits and boundaries. And this wall prevents the emptiness inside, but it's a hyper adaptability to hide. They can often look like type 3s, the self-preservation 5. But it's a stinginess and protection them from limited resources this world takes. And when those instincts come up, I'm going to protect myself. And instincts then almost specifically the self-preservation 5, it's a double 5. It's the ultimate place of making sure that I'm okay. So they really have to experiment with boundaries, plug into others and world, connect with their anger. You know, feelings can actually reload you. Aware how connection loads batteries is really the work for the self-present. For the socialists, what they do is, Uranio's the social 5 is, they go into a totem. This world is scary and uncertain, and my instincts come up. And the type 5 then, which is avarice, go to totem, the social. I think Dirk also sits more or less here. The Enneagram is the totem. Totem for Ranio, totem for Dirk. It's a place, let me protect myself, and I live in a world that's the Enneagram world. Because this world takes. So I'll go and live in that world. Many of you know, I think you know Dirk as well. Dirk can be, if you have conversation with Dirk, he could be quite private and not antisocial, but he's quite introverted, except when it comes to the topic of the Enneagram. Then he's more social, extroverted than anybody else. So this is really, it's almost a bomb squad of instincts that come up, and the person will just explode. And in that world, they will be very extroverted. Knowledge is my world. That interacts with others who share the same interest, passion for super ideas. A fulfilled mind is a fulfilled life. They can look a lot like a type 7, distracted all over the place. So their development is really emotions, and people can also be acknowledged to understand totem is not real life, it's fake. And they have to work, understand that not knowing is the real wisdom. And wisdom is in the here and now, not in the totem. And the one-on-one, it's very rare I see this in my world of work. I'm not sure where they have gone, but it's the emotional 5. It's there's a magical world out there, and I find that magical world in another person or an instrument. Like it might be playing the guitar or the piano or my wife or my best friend or poetry. They almost disappear into a romantic other world. It's very romantic and emotional. I'm not sure what David White is, but I can imagine if he says he's a one-on-one 5, it would make sense to me. He goes into that world. Slightly different than the totem. The totem is a place of security. This is a place of I just disappear into it. they then have to become aware that they put the other thing on a pedestal. You know, life is more than the piano, it's more than the romantic others. Intimacy development for themselves with real humans. They test others very, very quickly and well, as to not test other people. People are just are people. So connect with the ordinary of life. Life is magical already. This is actually quite an easy one, Lucille, for me in a way. Type six is because instincts are six. That's what we all are. We all have the self-preservation, one-on-one and social, because we are all have sixes in us. In our DNA is fight, flight, freeze. So when doubt and fear, when that hits us, um, it is for the self-preservation. It comes over as warmth. I doubted my own ability, and because I doubted my own ability, I would then have to be dependent on other people. And the best way to be dependent on other people is to be, if you're warm and nice, other people would most probably like you. It's a warm outside. I'm going to tell Rania to take out the cold heart. I think I do have a warm heart, but apparently I have a cold heart as well, and feet. Definitely cold feet, ready to escape. Um, Lacks courage, plays safe, always in doubt. In fact, doubt is my religion. And I'm okay with it. Endless questions and risk. Yeah, if, but, no, why not? And it can look a lot like a type twos, but the self-preservation type two, for instance, have a relationship fear, while the type six, we have an existential fear. So fear looks like both of us could be the same. No, but the one worries about people, the other one worries about living. So that's it looks like warmth. We show warmth to this world. Development then is to trust our own competence, develop courage to face worst case scenarios, get angry, be bad, just do it, and divide things by three. Instead of doing it in 3 weeks, do it in 1 week. And the social, I think Matsky's is this. This is I doubt and mistrust in people. While I, as a self-preservation, don't trust myself. Musk doesn't trust people. In fact, doesn't trust Earth. Let's go to Mars. Um, Self-driving cars. Don't trust people. Uber sits here. The Uber system. We need to have a system. We don't trust taxis. Self-driving cars sits here. I think some of the operating systems in businesses, where let's just cut people out, and AI sits here in a way. There's also a place then of cults. It's really taking over the world, taking decision making away from people. It's German efficiency. Development then is to act more from instinct. So get out of your head, own their own leadership rank, embrace paradox and ambiguity, doubt systems more. And we see that with Musk. Even his own system, Grok, would say he's not, he believes in Musk. He believes in Grok in such a way that as if it's perfect. It's not perfect. Systems aren't perfect. Now, as a self-preservation six, I trust myself 30%. The social don't trust people at all, 0%. And the one-on-one trust themselves 130%. Now, why the extra 30? Well, that's phobic, that's fear. If you have to trust yourself 100%, it still be reality, but 130%, no, you're just scared. So this is the place of dealing with this world, is to intimidate, no doubt at all. And I'm in your face, then look a lot like a type 8, like a type 4. It looks like self-confidence, assertiveness, but the best form of defense is attack. The counter is phobic. To look strong and beautiful is strength. Keeps danger at distance, crazy, rebel, type 8, type 4. They don't look scared at all. And often when they type, they think this is a lot of bullshit. I mean, how can you fear? I mean, surely this Enneagram type 6, no, it's not me. Well, you might just be the counterphobic one. So really to be disarmed and vulnerable, develop courage to be without armor, access fear and feel fear rather than acting it out. Vulnerability is a strength. It's same work for the type 1 as more or less for the type 8.
Mm.
I
And if
think
you're afraid
hopefully
in the scrum, don't bite the opposition on the other side.
don't do that. And so I hope I'm landing here that you can't say that's typical work for type 6
Yeah,
development work. No, there's different development work for type 6. And some type 6s and type 8s in your teams or your clients might have the same work.
absolutely. And with the one-to-one or sexual ones, those three might share a lot of development work. Yeah.
Yeah. So now these instincts come up. This reptile catches the mammal of the seven, and gluttony. Like gluttony meets the instincts, and the seven goes this gluttony that I have, and these instincts. Remember, the instincts is like a bomb squad. It's an extra force. It's an acute upgrade of energy. It's a protein shake on steroids. It comes up. It's just instinctive. It hits the seven, and then gluttony for alliances. I mean, nobody can compete against self-preservation seven. Serial networkers continuously build alliances, keen for opportunities. No pain for me. No pain for me. It's like the Playboy archetype, a Playboy archetype. They can look like 8, 6, and 3, likable. And within a conversation, 2 minutes in a conversation, they've connected Lucille with Shia and with Sally and with somebody. It comes to them. They don't look for it. It's an incredible, it happens instant. And they've got to learn that there's more to life than being happy. If you say to you, self-preservation seven client, there's more to life than being happy, they're not going to understand what you are saying. It's highly unlikely. They're not going to, it's going to say that again, try it out. Your self-preservation, they have to learn there's more to life than being happy. They don't understand that. So owning their self-interest motives in networking, it's not just about other people, it's actually to make sure that I'm okay. Empathy to the self and others, slow down, work on FOMO and JOMO. I mean, for the seven, there's fear of missing out. The work for the seven, then there's also joy in missing out. There's also, that's where there's a line from the seven to the five. Suggestibility, gluttony for fascination. If if you want to sell, if you're in a business where you walk in streets and you got to sell stuff that's these kind of funny props and things that people sometimes sell, if you walk into a 117 and you can somehow your suggestibility there, you can sell it to them. They kind of suggest this is the type that will buy anything from anybody, anywhere. If you can just for a moment convince them there's some fascination in this thing. So that gluttony for fascination, it's a Peter Pan archetype for me. So it's like I'm fascinated, I'm going into another world as well. Optimism like someone in love, fantasy and dreams. It's excessive need for no pain. Remember the self-preservation, no pain for me. This is no pain, no pain. And they have childlike dreams, almost like a self-preservation type 2. Peter Pan-like. It's your friend that's 40, 45, 50, and he's actually never grown up. But not in a bad way, but it's just that to keep alive in this world is to have a gluttony for fascination. Same as for the type 4 here, the work is similar to type 4. Explore the beauty and excitement in the ordinary. Interact with real people. Tolerate reality as also exciting and joyful. Wash the dishes. Let's wash the dishes. And the social then is also the place of, and Lucille, I mean, you know a few of them and I know, and they would most probably be the winners when it comes to being workaholics. This is gluttony for not exploiting others. No pain for others. They stand in the back of the queue. If there's a queue at the buffet, they would stand at the back of the staff who came to fetch what's left over, and then they will go and ask the staff what's left. They can look a lot like a type 2, but it's not because they want people to love them and like them, is they want that for the world. look a lot like a social 8 type 2, most probably like a social 2 as well. But they really they work bloody hard till Fridays, and then their real life starts on Saturday. Their real work starts Saturday, Sundays, where they most probably run 2 or 3 NGOs, and they're part of hospice or something. These people, when it's social in a work, when a workshop, when you work in a social 7, and a type 7 starts crying, it might be the social 7 who starts crying because they are just depleted. And when they start crying, everything stops. They're a wonderful type to, if you need to get people to understand emotions and understand people, this type has got an absolute rare gift of connecting with people on a large scale. For them, it's soul and spiritual work. They need to learn how to receive, manage their boundaries, create realistic ideals, dreams. Less is more. And life balance issues is real tough, but I still have to meet a social 7 that is scaled down. Um, they are, it's machine-like. 2 more types to go, and then I'm going to show you something that I find fascinating, and we're going to get into the interesting stuff, and that would be some questions and stuff. I hope you are still there and not knocked over with PowerPoints, because this feels like I'm a type 5, and yeah, death by PowerPoint. If this was ever death by PowerPoint, I'm like I'm guilty. So seeing that we are in an 8, maybe just a pause for my own voice, because if I'm an 8, then I'll just send you the slides, and you're going to get this. You're going to get the subtypes whether you like it or not. If I'm the type 8, if I'm a type 8, I'll just say, Lucille, I'm tired now. Can somebody else take over? Sure, you can send this to the people. And by the way, I'm just going to get myself a glass. It's 5:15. Let's get a glass of wine. And um, I'm just wondering why I would do this if I was an 8. I wonder if 8s, is there any 8 here that would be able to do, well, put it this way, if I was an 8, we would have been finished already, I think. So, self-preservation 8. Just maybe to pause, that lust, it's not lust just for beer and all the nice things in life. It's often misunderstood. It's a lust for life, but actually more, it's a lust to be as innocent as a child again, because I could never be a child. My upbringing was of such, and my environment was of such nature that I had to be a grown up. I had to stand tall. I had to be strong. And what I actually just want, I would just want to be innocent like a child again. And those 3 instincts now come up, and it meets lust. And the self-preservation can then say, well, now is my time. Give it all to me. I want it. I'm going to take it. Because I never had it. And now there's a chance for me, because life owes me. It's the big daddy. It's the male lion. Most armed and defendant type 8. No tolerance or patience. Well, not no, but little tolerance and patience. I know what I need, and I know also that others need me. They can look like a type 1-on-one type 1. This is how I survive in this world. And so what they will show then is they will show satisfaction, in the sense that I got what I wanted. Because they're not waiting for what they want. They chuffed. So what the world sees is satisfaction. I've got it all. I've got it. Got the job. I've got the car. I've got the family. Got the paddle racket. I've got the best friends. I, life has never been better. So what the world sees is satisfaction, but actually what's behind it is something very different. Yeah. Development is there's strength and vulnerability. awareness of the how they behave. They never get in trouble with what they do or what they say. They get in trouble with how they say it and how they do it. Patience and trust in others. Share and allow others to take care of your deeper needs. Hey, Peter, you don't have to grab it. Other people will actually give it to you. Possession is a slightly different way. It's like, well, the one is give it to me. This is, I am the gift. I have a gift and I'm going to give it to you. So take me, possess me in a way, and I'm going to possess you as well. Because once you have me, I mean, this will be the best. You're just not going to know how lucky you are. And I will also be lucky. It's like I'm going to possess you and you're going to possess me. It's almost a place of possession as we own each other. One of these types, I asked them, where can I sit at the table, at a boardroom table? And he pointed to me, I must sit at the head of the table. And I said, well, that's the head of the table. Where can I sit? He says, Casper, you can sit wherever you want to. Where I sit is the head of the table. So don't you think if you sit at the head of the table, you're going to be the head of the table. It's not kind of, I mean, this type is there. They are the center of attraction. It's a 80-ish eight. Emotional, rebellious, look like that. But on the positive side, they change the world. It's the essence of a mover and shaker. If you want to get something done and you want to transform, if you want to save a country and save the world, this type can be downside, but they can also be absolutely the most incredible type when they are in their higher self. For them, again, exploring vulnerability, what's below, swap your home and work energy. Often this is a type that says, no, at home I'm a baby. And well, how about swapping how you're at home, be at work. And then the social one looks absolutely like a type two in many ways. In many ways. Give it all to us or to all of us. So give it to me. I'm the gift. I have a gift, and this one is give it to all of us. This type is looks so type two, very difficult to type because for them it's the mother lion. Their aggression is in service of the others, loyal and protective. It's never about them, never. It's about the marginalized or my group. And you would never think this is a type eight. Well, it is. It's a social eight. It's a social eight. So the sloth actually just being lazy or forgetting that word sloth is a tough one for me from passion, but it's actually it's more a lack of right action. It's laziness. It's the laziest of all the archetypes. And I'm so glad my partner's not again on, well, I've said it to her many times, she's a nine. But it's lazy to their own needs. So they forget about their own needs, and that's the laziness, and therefore also workaholics because they can't say no. Everybody else's needs come first, but the appetite. We I don't always like this appetite example, Lucille. That's I think it's from Urania or from Naranjo, but often it looks like the self-preservation is appetite for certain dysfunctional rituals, um, series watching, bad food eating, sleeping. It's kind of half human, half mattress. Half human, half mattress is the self-preservation. It's like the typical nine that we see, but that's just the one subtype. The others look very different. Satisfy physical needs by finding comfort. They forget their own being, hates any disharmony, will be mad at someone for being mad at someone else. They get angry at someone a week after the incident. A week afterwards, they, oh, shit, I can't believe how angry it's like. Development is get in touch with anger. So for me, it's very shortcut. If you have clients in the nine box, you can uh, half your coaching. This is the one Enneagram type that I've seen over many years of working with so many people. If the type nines get into gym or into physical in their bodies, everything changed. But the problem is they all go for yoga. No, the eights must go for yoga. The nines must go kickboxing, weights, short distance sprinting. Um, but they go it's their own goal for type nines to go into yoga. And so I'm not an expert here still. So all the nines here, carry on with your yoga. I think you're getting what I'm trying to say. Fusion, very rare that I see this in my world in Enneagram. I think I've had maybe I've worked with more than 10,000 people. So I think if I had five one-on-one nines, it's very rare. I think they fused into something else. They zone into the other. It's often in the Mr. and Mrs. Greep is the housewife. She becomes a husband, or the husband becomes his wife. It's you can't separate the two. It's somebody who really fuse into another person, taking on someone else's being, because this world is just too disharmonious. I'll just live through somebody else. Fear of abandonment, so they really adapt to become someone else. They can look like a 5, 4, or a 2. So it's really for them is to find their own voice, learn to be alone with the support of the self, etc., etc. And then the social nine is I've zoned into the group. It's incredible. They are if the threes are the chameleons, meet the octopus. This is not camouflage, this is mimicking. They just become, you won't be able to see how they separate from the group. And on the Enneagram, they will immediately be any other Enneagram type in their environment that's missing. And they would be a better three than a three, a safer six than a six. They would be a more visionary seven than a seven. They would be a more, it's just incredible because they do anything for harmony. Therefore end up workaholics and lazy to their own needs. But now the interesting part here, so let's see, I'm going to use hopefully not longer than 10 minutes on this. So those were the subtypes, and again, those subtypes are still in. We're trying to work them out. It's still in movement. And your subtypes, you should play with them. They can move around. They should move around. You shouldn't be fixed on them. Uh, and what I find interesting, these are conversations with Uranio and B. And what's fascinating is that people look there might be a mask, almost a mask on top of the mask, and that is your stacking. At the moment, the word that Uranio liked to use is your sequence. If you are dominant SX and you are repressed SP, in other words, you've got social in the middle, this person looks very different than a person who is SX, SP, and social. So what you will see is you'll see a nice person. Now you would think a nice person is a type 2 or maybe a 6 or a 7. No. Don't put nice person to a type. Put it to a stacking. The same way that intense is to a stacking. Intense is not 4. Any type who is SX on top, self-praise second, is intense. That's how you'll experience them. Happy. SX socials are happy. They look happy. I'm not saying they are happy. They look happy. They look cheerful. They look crazy. They look unpredictable, impulsive, visibly active, high energy, lack of focus and heart. Heart in the sense that there's energy. So if we want to work in teams and groups, and if we want to kind of type people, then you should be able to say if somebody's like that, it's more likely that you can predict the stacking than the type. Because these are not motivations. This is not what drive your behaviors. These are the behaviors. This is what we can see. And at the same time, as well, where I support them is, or Rania specifically, is an urge to move away from Enneagram descriptors of what people are. Is instead of saying somebody is a considerate helper, is maybe just to say supporter, one word. Can we find one word for the types? Because considerate, you might put into any other substacking. Here's the self-praise social SX compared to the self-praise SX social. Maybe you can take photos if you wanted to of this. But I just want to ask with this, please do not distribute this. Anyway, this is still in process. It's still it's not only my IP. This is work in progress because the Enneagram is alive. But I thought it's Euphoria and it's Lucille and it's this group. I want to share with you this that I think, and there I can go. So let me start at the beginning. So that would be and my invitation for you is to don't see this as fact and for you to really take a photo of yours and play with it and we need to find hopefully 6 words that would describe this in a word that everybody in the Enneagram world will agree, which would never be self-praise social, self-praise SX. I've had that one on, and here's the social self-praise versus the social SX. The good guy and girl, that is social SP. Also the team player, also the problem solver. So yeah, your Enneagram type is in the end is that. And I don't know what would be the picture. That's your type. What would be the picture for the subtypes? But it is that part. And I've got, I think it's, I mean, there's growth tips that I have for depending what your thing is. Because if you're self-preservation dominant, you have different growth work to do than if you are self-preservation repressed. You can send me an email and this I'll send. This is my IP. This I'll send to you. But this is also fascinating. And the example is just without everybody reading through everything. If you are self-preservation dominant, don't just pack a jersey and see what happens when you are late. It's kind of the yes. You must package it. You must it's for me as Casper. It's and Oranio challenged me on it. Is say, Casper, just arrive. Trust that somebody else will have a jersey for you. See what happens when you are late. Don't be over prepared. And if you're social low, pack a jersey in a case somebody else for somebody else. So these are just simple tips for and here I have for if you're socially dominant. If you're socially dominant, delete half of your WhatsApp groups and only join a new group that you started. And if you're social repressed, well, join and take part in WhatsApp groups that other people started. And so on and so on. So let me stop share here. And it's going to be ridiculous if I say any questions because it it might be twofold. So it might be embarrassing if there's no questions, and I might not be able to answer the question. So as a self-preservation 6, it's a daring thing to say. Any questions?
So
Any
let's take
comments,
that
anything?
moment. Yeah, let's take a moment to say anything you want to say, ask, add. Casper, you gave us like a whirlwind tour of the Enneagram, the instincts, and it's been wonderful. So let's see where the group is at. Um, and I'm just going to remove the spotlight so we can see everyone. So just pop your hand up if you want to say, ask something. Um, Dana, thank you. You've saved Casper in this moment.
Casper, I am a fellow Self-Pres 6. So we're together here. You know what's striking about me, and I have a friend who's done some other work, I think with Russ Hudson, and she came back and she said, "Oh my gosh, you really need to focus on the instinct." So I was super glad when when this popped up. And I guess what I'm taking away from this, and I'm big in self-pres, like for example, if my husband is not, and he's a 7, not making dinner, I know I'm gonna have dinner, but I like start to freak out that my dinner is not happening on time. And I know it's ridiculous, but I guess that's just an anecdote. My question or my thought is like how, like I think I focused more on type in this. I'm just wondering, what's your balance of working with people on starting with instinct? Because it feels like it drives a lot. So does that question make sense? Where do you place balance on working with people?
Yeah, so
And I
just
don't
there
hold it
was
as either or. That's not my point. Okay, I'll stop.
so just on the self-preservation point is we have dinner tonight, and but I already knew like 2 days ago what dinner is going to be tonight. So I'm a self-pres high, and my partner is self-pres low. So yes, in that it's almost like there will not be if I don't plan for it. So it depends on my clients. I think the moment my client is a counter type, I bring that up as soon as possible because uh, my counter type client is going to read the normal report and or Google stuff and is going to be confused. So the counter type I immediately bring out. If I work with a team and there are one or two counter types, I immediately bring this. I don't give a whole teaching of all the subtypes, but I give an explanation that we have three different of each type. And I do that because often what happens is, oh, but I th this Enneagram test is wrong because Lucille typed as a 4 and so did Kate, but they are no, they're not. They're very different people. This Enneagram is wrong. No, the one might be a counter type. So also to help people build trust in the system. I bring it up when I work with teams. So, and then it depends on the depth work of the group or the individual. Some of my people, once I mention it, they really get into it and they want to know everything about that. The subtypes have got it's got an energy where it kind of sucks people in. So I tested, I would say to people, oh, and by the way, there are also three different type ones. So if you are interested, and then I leave it for the client to come back to me. If I work with a client longer than 10 sessions, whatever, we'll go into the subtypes. But I think it's too much in the beginning. Because subtypes, lines, wings, integrations, and because what I've just shared with you, the sequencing, we need a workshop not about 8 types. We need a workshop not about 27 subtypes. We need a workshop about 54 different stackings. There's more than 27. We different personality in a room. We actually have 54 different characters in the room because your stacking
Mm,
makes a big difference. But
mm.
that's too much
And
for somebody
maybe
in the beginning.
Maybe if I can add there just for a moment, Dana, I think it's important to note that there are two ways of working with the instincts. The one is thinking about self-praise social and the sexual instinct almost like as the biology that precedes personality. And then there's the way this merges and creates the 27 subtypes or the 54 stackings. And both of them are valid ways of working, but they're very different. So if I work just with self-praise, we'll work with how does self-praise show up in your life? Whereas when I work with you as a self-praise one, I'm working with worry. Does that make sense? And so there's two ways of working. I don't know if that makes sense to you, Casper.
Yeah. And if we really want to go, and it's, but it's, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. It makes sense.
I like that phrasing, biology that precedes type, because I feel like for me, I had a lot of struggle as a 6 figuring out what my type was because I didn't like or trust what was coming back. But it was 1,000% clear to me that I was self-pres. I didn't have any doubt about that. Yeah.
And that's it brings clarity. It brings a lot of clarity. So the moment the client is struggling, understanding or thinking that's their type, and you're in a process of self-discovery, it's at the right time. You will know, bring in the subtype for that client and say, does this, and most of the time, oh yeah, okay, now I get it. It sits very differently. And if you want to work on your subtypes, and we should. Not tame them, but in a way play with them. It's better to let go a little bit of your. Still, can you just put? Am I on? Or I think Dana's still on, and it says self-preservation 6. That's not going to be nice. So it's interesting that it's better to let go a little bit of your dominant than try to be more of your repressed. Because remember, these instincts are 100% of us. If you do 10% less of your dominant, that 10% will go into the other two. They will rise automatically. And it's safer to be a little bit less self-pressed for you than not try to be social or. And once you let go a little bit of, I can actually let the meal, I can trust that what I've got in the kitchen might actually be enough. I can actually go do shopping without a list and trust that I won't forget. So it's to do a little bit less of the self-press. The others will just wake up. It's better to do less and wake up than to knock on the door and wake up.
Lovely. Lovely. That makes so much sense, Casper. Let's hear other comments, clarification, questions. Shaya.
Hi, everyone. So I did the aphoria assessment in 23 and then again in 25, just earlier this year, and my instinct changed in 2 years. So I'm curious. I've been curious about the meaning making. I went through like a really big, hard divorce. So I moved from SX to social, leaning more into community. So my orientation has been different. I have the curiosity of how small my self-pres is, how repressed. I'm also a 4. So but and because we have the TriFix perspective, which I've really appreciated, it's been interesting to map across each type and how much I actually relate to the 8 and more than, so it's like ends up being like almost like a field of 9 to start. Like that's where my mind started to map. But then also to your earlier point when you were talking to Dana, my lines to 1 and 2, I was like, those were interesting, like how the instinct overlaid there. I can feel the heat of that. I mean, I cried a little, like it was like really being mirrored back some of the things. So I'm more just in like integration reflection mode of the information. I can join some of the other comments of it's slightly overwhelming, but it's also inspiring to look at some other developmental places to like let go of some of the fixations that are driven in that kind of more semi-conscious, unconscious ways the reptilian brain will present herself or themselves. So if there was a question, yeah, maybe just like how to simmer all that down. And then like what can you say about the meaning making that we might do if we change? It sounds like it's a good, not good thing, but it's like it shows something like there's more
I think,
flexibility.
yeah, I think when you do, and Nicole, please shut me up if you have a different, not shut me up, but bring your perspectives in. I think if you have to do your, let's say, your Enneagram report again, or you have to do the questionnaire again, you should be the same type.
Yeah.
That was measuring what drives your behavior. The rest of the measurement is not necessarily driving your behavior. It's more about your characteristics and behavior and stuff like that. Your other lines or what you score on the other types, that should be fluid, depending on context. It's not that they should all be fixed and exactly the same. They can, and it's not necessarily going to happen over a weekend, but over maybe 3 weeks or a 3 month period, or you might become a mother, or you might have a new job, or you might move to a new city. What I find with those other counts, they move, they shift, and they shoot, depending on context. Not your main type.
Yeah. The
Then
main
then your instincts, your subtypes, definitely on context. They should move. They should, if they are fixed, that means you are taming them, and you can't tame a crocodile. It's not untamable. It's the biggest fixation or fantasy that we have is we think we have tamed them. So when you have a dominant one, you are selling the others short. You need those others in the jungle. You are compensating for his issue with self-praise. If you're high on self-praise, you're not good with it. You have an issue with it. And depending on your context, those should change. You should not measure the same. If you are measuring the same self-praise, social, ethics over a long period of time, I think you're not doing your work.
Okay. I like that
They
maybe.
they should you should dance with them. You should dance with them, and context-wise. And we have seen in areas people would be high on self-praise. I can tell you, no, it's highly likely if we go now to some of the Eastern Europe countries and we take a company there close to where the bombings happened, they're going to be high on self-praise or social. Maybe not one-on-one because so yes, your context and your own personal development, you should dance with them,
Okay.
play with your instincts.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks. I love that. You can't tame a crocodile. That is like a big mistake that you get to probably only make once in a significant way. Let's hear from one or two other people. Anyone else with a question, comment, reflection that's come up for you? Maybe around yourself, your own instincts, or the stackings that we spoke of. Um, for me, that was very interesting. I'm sexual dominant with self-praise repressed and social in the middle. And so I think a lot of people's confusion, for example, with me, Casper, is like there's they say, but you're so vibrant, you're so charismatic, you're so active, you're so dynamic. Are you really a four? But like a lot of that's just my stacking, right? So
Oh,
that's very interesting. Yeah. Let's hear. Anyone else with a comment? Diane.
Tonight was a wow for me. I've been enthralled from the first moment we started. There's so much to integrate, but my diamond for tonight is that according to your level of maturity, and the context, you should dance with all your instincts. And for me as a four, it's about balance. It's about equanimity and reacting to the present moment, responding to the present moment, whether it be a tango, a cha-cha, a slow dance. Yeah. So it's a wow. Thank you, Lucille. Thank you, Casper.
Thanks. Well, there's a tricky question for you, Casper. If each of the instincts were a dance, which would they
Yeah.
be?
What was if it was a dance?
Yeah, if each
It's,
instinct is a dance, yeah, which,
yeah, I mean they are a dance, but it's interesting how they interact and how they work together. And when I mean, Gurdjieff originally wrote a lot about it, and you should see your instinct is actually a little bit like a monkey. Although monkeys are not reptiles, but he wrote beautifully in his book about it that when you go to the supermarket or to the market with a monkey and you have a string that you hold this monkey with, and if that string is so tight, like it's you have too much of it, you hold it so that monkey is going to be chaos. Monkeys don't like a tight string. If you walk into that market and there's no string to your monkey, it's going to be chaos. The monkey's going to be everywhere. The way you walk into the market, into life, is you walk with your pinky down on the shoulder of the monkey, and you are in your wise, centered self. And then that monkey knows exactly who is in control. And it's just a beautiful walk. And in a way, that's how we should be with our instincts. Is don't that too tight self-praise, don't let go social, is treat them all three as these beautiful energies that's instinctive that come up, but stay connected with them, but with your pinky.
hmm.
But you can only do that if you are in your grounded self. So there's the image, there's a dance that comes up. Um, Personally, for me, I'm very low on social, and I grew up in a apartheid government. I was in the army. I have a fear of groups. I don't trust groups. So for me, it's very low social, and I've got a high self-praise. And at this one workshop in Helsinki, of all places, I had to do a presentation at a big conference, and Uranio came to me, and I've got a little bag like this, and in this bag is a self-preservation six is everything. I mean, I think even my varsity keys still here for my, but there are three different antihistamines. I mean, everything is in here. So he took my bag. I said, where's my bag? He said, no, I don't need it. I said, I need my bag. He said, no, you can do this day today. He stole my bag in the morning. My passport is in there. My whole life is in there. I was never, ever been so uncomfortable as a self-preservation. He says, no, today is the day that you're not going to have a self-preservation instinct in your presentation. I'll never forget it. It was torture. It was the worst thing he was so bloody on purpose. But anyway, so now I arrive at the presentation and now I have to do it. And what happens 10 minutes in, I get hay fever. I get the worst hay fever that you can imagine. So I get hay fever. I don't have my antihistamines. I'm stressed because I don't know where my bag is. It's never happened to me in my life. It's also my clicker is in there. I didn't have my clicker. Like I had to use somebody else's freaking clicker. It's not my clicker. And self-preservation, I've got two clickers, but mine and extra batteries. But there, I then stand in front of this group, and I had to look around one stage and say, after my third sneeze, sorry for the interruption, but anybody in this group which is social, has anybody got maybe for me an antihistamine because I can feel I'm getting this. I'm focused on the presentation. I'm nervous. I need help from the group. And I'll never forget that moment. It's like 10 people came almost running to me, helping me. It was so slick. It was so easy. And three of them are still a client of mine today. So from a survival perspective, it was stupid to be self-praise.
Mm.
Social is actually the way to survive also. So since that, I've joined many more groups about the Enneagram. I would do this session today, part of the Enneagram. So no, so for me, it was really transformative, where groups are not all bad, and I can actually depend on people sometimes, and I can trust if there's 50 people, somebody will have a Panado. I don't have to have 20 Panados in my bag. And that was a real-time learning for me. I'm still angry with him, but but that's how we work. So Uranio forced me to drop a little bit of my self-praise. And I think I did the best presentation because I was in the group, I was part of the group. I was not just this one trying think I've got everything covered. So that's a real life story of an example of what one can do.
Wow, that is trickster teaching, right? In a way that is very powerful. The trickster took the bag away, and then
Yeah,
you
he
had
did.
no option but to learn how to lean into another instinct. Wow. We have time, I think, for one more question or comment. So anyone else that wants to check, ask, say, offer an insight. Joe.
Yeah, so it's a question, I think. I'm always curious about the instincts and the lines of whatever you want to call them, the lines we used to say integration and disintegration. I know we don't say that anymore. And the wings, which I know we don't do very much anymore, but if I'm a self-praise 4, then do I have a self-praise 5 wing? And do I integrate to a self-praise 1? You know what I'm asking.
It's such a beautiful question, and it's lovely. And I was a little bit scared that question is going to come up because I'm not sure how to answer that. If I go on my line, do I take my instinct with or not? Um, I think your instinct hits your passion in your type, and that's where it manifests. So those instincts are always there. So if you are self-praise 4, I think if you flip into the one or you go into the one, I think it's highly likely that you will then also be self-praised hitting that one. Yeah, my answer is yes, but with doubt because I'm a 6. So a friend and a colleague of ours, Gabriela Grobler, she does wonderful work, and she's just learning about Enneagram, but she's more clever than the normal person. I don't know, Gabriela, I'm not sure if you're on this call, but she's really into the mathematics. And at the moment, Joe, it looks like there's about 783 different combinations. If you take in consideration what you've now said, if you take in consideration the tri-types, if you take in consideration the wings, if you take in consideration the lines of integration, if you take in consideration the maturity, we actually there are 700, and at the mathematically, it's in a compound effect. So I don't know. It's a beautiful question. I would think I'm not sure. I don't want to sound clever. I can feel I'm going into my 5, trying to sound clever. I don't have an exact answer for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think an offer would be um if I'm if I'm if I'm going on the line from 4 to 1, and what I end up in is a trap of worry, then I may want to explore ways in which I can get to the high side of Enneagram 1 rather than falling into the more worrisome worry pot lower side of 1. So I think the lines are always they can be useful, and they can be another version of a trap in some kind of way. Casper,
So
just
just
one, yeah.
one small thing is, what I've learned over time is, if you can get your client to do some tiny little tweak regarding their subtype issues, that tweak, it's fractal. It goes.
Yes,
It's
yes.
much easier to play with a tiny tweak on the instincts than to try to have a personality change in your type.
Yeah, very, very powerful. Yes. Yeah, and to try and figure out whether I take the instinct with me across the line can be less useful than just trying to make a 1% change. Yeah.
Of the
So to
instinct.
think about it versus to do it is always useful. Casper, just as a thought, we're busy with our new a kind of a couples report that works with Trifix and instinct stacks. There's more than 25,000 versions of the report when you take the full Trifix to Trifix, instinct to instinct into consideration between two people. Then you take that 700 and something and times it by 700 and something, and all of a sudden you have a whole lot of versions, which is why we are all snowflakes, right? Very unique. So from our side, Casper, it's been absolutely wonderful to spend some time with you today. And thank you for not only bringing your self-praise doubt and warmth, but also bringing your great expertise. And I think this was a masterclass on steroids. And we would love to at some point have you back so that we can just continue to process and talk about this. I don't know what the 54 versions in 2 hours would look like. Maybe we'd need to break that up over a couple of sessions. But thank you so much. And it's been wonderful to have all of you here. Please join us again when we get together on the 22nd of July with Hani du Toit on what if connection was found in a deck of cards. And yeah, it's been wonderful. So let's all unmute and give our thanks to Casper at once in a warm way out loud to make him feel the hug of our community.
Thank you, Casper.
Thank you,
Casper.
Casper.
That was
Amazing.
wonderful.
Amazing.
Thank you, Casper.
Sally.